If you've watched any movies within the past 20 years or so, you'll notice the growth of positive queer representation in film. Brokeback Mountain, But I'm a Cheerleader, and Imagine Me and You in the forefront of the early 2000s, and newer films such as Call Me By Your Name, Love Simon, and Kajillionaire making an impact within the last 5 years. But what caused this growth so that queer movies have a place in theaters today? Before movie ratings like PG, PG-13, and Rated R were issued by the Motion Picture Association of America, large Hollywood studios had to abide to the Motion Picture Production Code, or more commonly known as the Hays Code, named after William H. Hays between 1934 and 1968. The Hays Code prevented any and all forms of sexual perversion to be shown on screen, and the only sexual relationships to be shown were committed heterosexual couples. This principle soon caused filmmakers to allude to a character's sexual identity via heavy subtext, also known as queer coding. Characters like the obsessive Mrs. Danvers in Hitchcock's Rebecca, who yearned for her former mistress, and the flamboyant Joel Cairo in The Maltese Falcon, who had a thing for his cane. Both of these characters and many more held the typical stereotypes of gay men and lesbian women: frail and feminine, and obsessive, intimidating, and brooding. But by the late 60s, the Hays Code had little to no authority on what movies could be released, and leaving studios and independent filmmakers to make blatantly queer films. Queer films and queer representation began to reappear again in the 70s and 80s. Queer characters like Frankenfurter in the Rocky Horror Show, the all-queer cast/characters in Boys of the Band, etc. Issues like coming out, homophobia, etc. were common topics during this time. Despite the 70s and 80s being fairly popular and successful, the 90s flourished with newer films. What made new queer cinema films in the 90s so special was its formless approach to style. Typical Hollywood movies were classical in approach with a beginning, middle, and end, the ideal way of storytelling. Realistic movies attempt to replicate and mimic real life, like any of your typical slice-of-life movies, but formless films relied on the power of the image and exploring the abstract. Todd Haynes, Cheryl Dunye's, and Greg Araki's films all share this formula style. The setting is presented artificially and tells the audience that these characters only exist on the screen. Not only did this help queer films separate themselves from Hollywood movies, it opened filmmakers' creativity to create their own reality and bring up political commentary. Let's use The Watermelon Woman as an example. Cheryl Dunye appropriates the documentary style to construct a new reality. The main character, played by Dunye herself, is uncovering a lost black film actress, Faith Richardson.
I know it has to be about black women because our stories have never been told. So I've been renting movies. No, I haven't been renting movies, but I get movies from the video store that I work at, and I've taken all these films out from the 30s and 40s with black actresses in them, like Hattie McDaniel and Louise Beavers. And in these films, in some of the films, the black actresses aren't even listed in the credits, and I was just totally shocked by that.
Spoilers ahead, but at the end of the movie, it is discovered that Faith Richardson never existed, driving home the fact that there are many unidentified black actresses lost to history, and that black actresses didn't get the same treatment as white actresses during that time. The 90s were the catalyst for queer representation from decades later and many years to come.